Prepare to embark on an epic journey of power, betrayal, and redemption, where the war for the world's soul continues to be fought. The story of the fallen angel begins now. Imagine for a moment, a place where light doesn't just shine but pulses in harmony with all things. There, at the heart of paradise, where time has no haste and space is vast, every fragment of the universe echoes the Creator's presence. Colors are more vibrant than we can imagine. Sound is a constant melody of peace. Every leaf, every star, every breath of wind reflects divine perfection. In this place, angels move like beings of pure energy and devotion, without a shadow of doubt or hesitation. The sky, a deep blue, is where angelic choirs sing unending songs, celebrating the creation, love, and justice of God. The order is absolute, yet far from a prison. It is a coordinated dance where each celestial being knows its exact place in the grand symphony of the cosmos. Everything is in perfect harmony. The light radiates wisdom, and the harmony is palpable, a constant vibration in the celestial ether. There is no pain, no tears. Only the deepest peace we can imagine, a peace that floods the spirit, overflowing with an immeasurable love that flows from the throne of God. Here, the Creator reigns with a gaze that sees everything, loves everything, and sustains everything. This is the celestial paradise, where every angel's purpose is to serve the source of all existence, in pure, unblemished worship. It was a place where nothing was lacking, where justice and love were not abstract ideas but living forces that permeated everything. Here, creation was at its peak, complete and immaculate. This was the paradise that Lucifer once knew, before the fall. And it was in this setting of unimaginable splendor that one of the most glorious beings ever conceived by the Creator emerged. Lucifer, the bearer of light, was like a radiant star among the angels, clothed in unparalleled beauty and power. Every movement of his seemed shaped by divine grace, every word an echo of perfection itself. His eyes gleamed like distant stars, and his voice was a melody capable of touching the hearts of other angels, awakening admiration and reverence. Chosen to hold a place of honor beside God's throne, Lucifer walked through the celestial gardens like a prince among his equals. His resplendent wings reflected the eternal light, and his presence brought a sense of order and power. Among the angels, he was seen as a leader, a guide, almost a reflection of divine light itself. Everything about Lucifer was impeccable. He possessed wisdom that seemed to flow directly from the mind of God, discernment as clear as the crystalline waters of the celestial river. And his beauty? Oh, his beauty was so astonishing that other angels often fell silent before him, absorbing his presence with a nearly sacred admiration. But it wasn't just his appearance that made him great. Inside Lucifer burned a flame, a force that drove him to seek more, to dive deeper into the mysteries of the cosmos and creation. He was the bearer of light, destined to guide and inspire. He was perfect, created in the image of all that was pure and noble. At that time, God's love for Lucifer was evident, poured out upon him like an overflowing chalice of blessings. He was not just an angel. He was one of God's greatest creations, a celestial masterpiece, destined to reflect the infinite glory of the Creator. And so, Lucifer walked the heavens, admired and revered, but still unaware that within him something was forming, something as subtle as a whisper in the darkness. That was his story up until then. But amidst all this splendor, a silent seed began to sprout in Lucifer. It was small, almost imperceptible at first, like a gentle breeze that barely stirs the leaves. He, who had always seen himself as a faithful servant, began to see himself differently. The admiration of the other angels, the prominent position he held, the unparalleled beauty he bore, all these no longer seemed merely a gift but a right. And this seed, once hidden, began to grow. Lucifer started to ask himself, why should I serve if I am as grand as those who worship God? Every time he looked at the throne, a new thought insinuated itself into his mind. He saw his own light reflected in eternity, and something inside him whispered, you are not like the others. You were made for more. And over time this voice, his own voice, grew louder, clearer, more tempting. Pride, which once seemed impossible in such a pure place, began to take root in Lucifer's heart. He began to believe that his glory came not just from the Creator but from himself. Vanity, like a shadow lengthening at the end of the day, spread. Lucifer, the most beautiful and wise of angels, began to think that he deserved to be more than a servant. He deserved to be worshipped. And so, the perfect harmony of paradise began to be disturbed, though invisibly to most. Lucifer's brilliance, which once only reflected the light of God, now seemed to glimmer with a new flame, a flame that did not belong to the celestial order. The angel of light was turning inward, longing for a power he should never have desired. The seed had germinated, and pride, now a living force within him, was ready to shape his destiny. Lucifer did not yet know it, but this path he was beginning to tread, this subtle change in his heart, was the beginning of something that would forever alter the heavens, the earth, and the very course of eternity. As pride grew in Lucifer's heart, he began to feel an unrest, a dissatisfaction he had never known before. What had once seemed the most sublime of existences now suffocated him. The radiance of the divine throne, which once enchanted him, now overshadowed his own light. He no longer wanted to be just a reflection, he wanted to be the source, the center. And so, he began to slowly turn away from the silent reverence that once filled his spirit. But Lucifer was not alone in his thoughts. His charisma and beauty made him a natural leader among the angels, and he began to plant the same seeds of doubt in the hearts of others who, like him, had been made to worship. Whispers spread through the heavens. Why should we bow? Why can't we too rule? We are beings of light, created in splendor. Shouldn't we have the right to decide our own destiny? The movement was silent but powerful. Lucifer gathered followers, angels who, drawn by the idea of a new order, began to question the balance of paradise. He spoke with eloquence, with a conviction that disarmed any opposition. To them, it didn't seem like betrayal but a quest for justice, for equality. It was as if Lucifer were awakening something new, something that until then had been suppressed. And so, among the whispers in the shadows of the glorious celestial lights, a rebellion was forming. Lucifer, now the leader of a movement of insurrection, firmly believed he could challenge God himself. His plan? To seize the celestial throne, usurp the divine order, and create a new kingdom, where he, the most beautiful, the most powerful, would be worshipped as the true sovereign. The harmony of paradise was about to be shattered. What had once been a perfect dance of lights and angelic voices now carried a silent tension, a foreboding of chaos. And at the center of it all was Lucifer, the most radiant angel, whose soul now burned not with divine love but with the consuming flame of pride. The rebellion was about to erupt, and the heavens would never be the same again. Then the inevitable happened. Lucifer's plan could no longer be kept in the shadows. The murmur of rebellion turned into a roar. The celestial harmony was broken by a deep and alarming dissonance, a crack in the splendor of eternity. Lucifer and his followers, now numerous, marched toward God's throne. Their pride, inflated to the limit, blinded them to what they were about to face. The heavens, which had known only peace, became the battlefield of an indescribable war. Lucifer, with his once brilliant wings now reflecting a distorted light, as though the beauty he once possessed was at war with the darkness forming within him. His followers, angels who had once sung praises, now bore the insignia of rebellion, ready to challenge the Creator himself. On the other side, the hosts loyal to God aligned themselves, led by the archangel Michael, whose flaming sword shone with divine justice. He and his angels stood firm, filled with the strength and conviction that came from God's very throne. There was no hesitation in their eyes, only sorrow for their brothers who had been lost to the darkness of pride. And then the war began. It was not a battle like we can imagine in the world of men. There was no blood, no physical wounds. But the heavens were torn asunder with the clash of unimaginable lights and powers. Lightning bolts of pure divine energy ripped through the ether, while cries of fury echoed through the infinite. Lucifer, the most beautiful of all angels, now transformed into something unrecognizable. His wrath made him fierce, his vanity blinded him, and his ambition consumed him. He believed he could win, that he could take God's throne and rule paradise. But God's power, immeasurable and unbreakable, soon made itself felt. Michael's sword, with a single stroke of light, cut through the forces of rebellion. The one who had once been the brightest of angels was defeated. His cries of rage and despair echoed through the heavens, but his defeat was certain, undeniable. God himself, in his absolute justice, decreed the sentence. Lucifer and his followers would be cast out of the heavens, condemned to fall forever into the depths, separated from the eternal light. And then, like lightning striking across the sky and disappearing on the horizon, Lucifer fell. He and the angels who followed him were cast far from paradise, their forms, once so bright, now shrouded in shadows. The great angel of light was becoming the prince of darkness, his glory transformed into torment, his beauty into despair. The battle was over. The heavens were secure once more, but they would never be the same. The perfect harmony had been broken, and a new era was beginning, an era where, for the first time, darkness existed in the universe. Lucifer fell. And his fall was like the end of a star, an explosion of light that, for a moment, illuminated everything around it before disappearing into the vastness of darkness. The angel, once so glorious, now consumed by the shadow of his own arrogance, plummeted from the sky like a meteor, dragging with him those who had believed in his promises of greatness. As he fell, all he felt was the pain of loss, the burning fury of his defeat, and the crushing weight of condemnation. He did not fall to a place of physical pain but to an abyss of absolute separation from divine light. Where once there was only the comforting presence of God, now there was a void, the cold of an eternity without purpose, without beauty, without redemption. And as Lucifer plunged into this abyss, his very essence began to change. The light that once radiated from him was extinguished, replaced by a darkness that consumed him completely. His eyes, once mirrors of celestial beauty, now burned with the fire of hatred. He was no longer Lucifer, the bearer of light. That part of him had been scorched by the flame of his own ambition. Now he was something different, something far more terrible. A new name echoed in his mind, a name fitting for his new existence: Satan, the adversary, the enemy of all that was pure, the opposite of everything he had once been. With him fell his followers, angels who, like him, had been beautiful and radiant. Now their forms were deformed by corruption, their wings, once majestic, blackened and torn. They were shadows of what they once had been. Together they gathered in the depths, their hearts full of resentment and pain. The pain of knowing what they had lost, the presence of God, the warmth of divine light, the perfect harmony of paradise. Satan rose from the abyss, his gaze fixed on the vastness of the void that now surrounded him. He did not lament. There was no regret in his heart, only a burning desire for revenge. If he could no longer sit on the celestial throne, if he could no longer be worshipped in the heavens, then he would find another way to satisfy his pride. And at that moment he vowed that if he could not destroy God, he would destroy his creation. He would corrupt everything that was good and beautiful, stain the divine masterpiece, humanity. Thus, from the depths of the abyss, Satan began to plot his new purpose. He would become the Lord of darkness, the enemy of light. And wherever there was life he would be there, tempting, corrupting, dragging souls away from God. The fall had ended, but the true conflict was just beginning. Satan now walked the earth, bringing with him the echo of his fury and his eternal fall. Now Satan walked the earth. His presence, though invisible to mortal eyes, was like a shadow that infiltrated every corner, every being, seeking to destroy what God had made. His hatred was the force that drove him, fueled by the unceasing pain of his fall and the absence of divine light. He was no longer the angel he once was, and over time what remained of his former glory became just a distant memory, a specter of what he had once been. The complete transformation of Lucifer into Satan was not instantaneous. With each moment away from the divine presence, something inside him became further distorted. The pride that had led to his downfall now became a bottomless pit of bitterness. He had not only lost paradise but also his essence, his light, his connection to all that was good. And this loss consumed him, like a fire that burned eternally, never finding peace. Satan, upon assuming his new role as adversary, delighted in the darkness he had created. He fed on suffering, doubt, and fear. What had once been a being of pure light was now an entity that reflected only shadows. His thoughts, once filled with celestial wisdom, were now labyrinths of deception and manipulation. He knew that he could not defeat God directly, but he could hurt him in another way, by pulling his creation away from his light. He began to watch humanity, God's masterpiece. They were fragile, yes, but also beautiful, endowed with free will, capable of choosing between light and darkness. And this was where Satan saw his opportunity. If he could corrupt these beings, pull them away from God, he would finally have his revenge. They could have God's love, but he would make them choose darkness. Lucifer's transformation into Satan was complete when he realized that his new mission was to cause chaos, pain, and destruction. Every time he pulled a soul away from the light, he felt a bitter taste of satisfaction, a temporary relief from his eternal anguish. He was now the Prince of Lies, the Lord of Darkness, and every lost soul was a triumph in the silent battle he waged against the Creator. And so, Satan walked among men with his new invisible and subtle form, whispering into the ears of the weak and leading hearts into sin. His beauty had been replaced by an inner darkness, his light by an eternal void. But to him that no longer mattered. He had accepted his new nature, embraced his destiny as the opposer, as the one who would eternally seek to destroy what God loved. His transformation was complete, and the world now faced an enemy who knew light better than anyone but who had chosen, out of his own vanity and pride, to become the embodiment of darkness. Satan, now fully aware of his new role, turned his hungry eyes to the Garden of Eden, where God's most beloved creation dwelled. There, among lush trees and crystal-clear rivers, were Adam and Eve, the first humans, living in perfect harmony with the Creator. They knew no fear, pain, or darkness. All they knew was light, goodness, and God's infinite love. And this, for Satan, was unbearable. He watched the humans, seeing in them the reflection of what he had once had but now was forever lost. His envy burned in his chest like hot coals. If he couldn't have God's love, then he would make humanity lose it as well. And so, Satan, with the cunning that remained from his former wisdom, devised his plan to corrupt what God had made so perfect. He chose to approach Eve, the more curious and vulnerable of the two. Disguised as a serpent, he slithered silently among the leaves, his eyes fixed on her. In his new form he was subtle, persuasive, his voice a seductive whisper that penetrated Eve's thoughts. He did not reveal himself as an enemy. No, he approached as someone who seemed to offer something tempting, something that Eve didn't even know she desired until she heard his words. "Why not taste the fruit of the tree of knowledge?" he whispered. "God said not to eat it, but does he fear that you might become like him? Is he hiding something greater from you, something deeper? You could be more than you are, you could be God's." Satan's words fell like poison into Eve's heart, awakening a hunger she didn't know existed. He knew exactly how to strike at humanity, exploiting the same weakness that had destroyed him. The desire to be more, to have more, to challenge divine order. Pride, curiosity, the thirst for power, these were Satan's instruments, and he wielded them with the skill of a master. And so Eve, drawn by the promise of knowledge and power, reached out and plucked the forbidden fruit. And in that moment what was perfect began to unravel. By tasting the fruit, she and Adam, who soon followed her example, opened the doors to sin, and with that, darkness entered the world. Satan, from the depths of his darkness, smiled. He had succeeded. Humanity, which once walked in the light, was now stained by sin, separated from God, just like him. The divine plan had been corrupted. The garden, once a symbol of perfection, was now marked by doubt and guilt. Humanity's fall had begun, and Satan reveled in the chaos he had sown. He did not destroy Eden with a flaming sword but with a whisper, with a lie. And in that moment, Satan established himself as the great tempter, the eternal adversary. What he had lost in the heavens he now sought to destroy on earth. And so, the battle for the soul of humanity began. A silent but fierce battle fought in the hearts and minds of men, where Satan would reign as the master of deception and sin. The fall of humanity marked the beginning of a new era for Satan. He had managed to infiltrate God's creation, breaking the pure connection between the Creator and his creatures. Eden was lost, man and woman were expelled from paradise, and darkness, the darkness that Satan knew so well, now dwelled in human hearts. It was a bitter triumph, but a triumph nonetheless for him. Satan knew that, despite his victories, the battle was far from over. He continued to fight, more determined than ever to pull as many souls away from the Creator as possible. But deep down he also knew that there was a power greater than his own, a light he could never fully extinguish. And so, the war for the human soul continued. Satan, tireless, remained the eternal adversary, seeking to corrupt all that was good. But he knew that, in the end, the fate of everything he had built was sealed. A final battle still awaited, and until then he would fight with all his might to drag as many souls as he could into the abyss with him. He was the Prince of Darkness, and that was his mission until the end of time. And so, time moved on, and Satan continued his work of destruction, relentless in his mission. Yet, one truth haunted him incessantly, a shadow he could not ignore. He knew that his fight, no matter how ardent and persistent, was destined for an inevitable end. Since his fall, since the first moment he rose against God, a prophecy had been spoken. The end, though distant, was already written. The echoes of the promise of redemption resounded throughout the universe, reminding Satan that no matter how many souls he corrupted, no matter how much chaos he sowed, God's plan was unshakable. Satan felt, in his essence, that the final battle was approaching. The moment when everything would reach its climax, when the war between light and darkness would be resolved once and for all. And so, when the world was consumed by darkness, when it seemed that darkness had won and humanity was on the brink of the abyss, the Creator would send his Son, the Messiah, the Savior. This Son, light incarnate, would come not only to save humanity but to defeat Satan and his legions once and for all. What Satan had done to the hearts of men, the Son of God would come to restore. And with him, hope would be reborn, breaking the chains that Satan had so carefully forged. Satan, knowing that this day would come, resisted. He prepared for the final battle with the fury of a being who knew his time was short. He gathered his armies, the fallen angels who now, like him, were condemned to live in eternal darkness. He spread chaos across the earth, trying to drag as many souls with him, knowing that, in the end, what he would face would be far more powerful than he could ever be. And then the day would come. The sound of trumpets would echo across the heavens and the earth, and what once seemed eternal would collapse in one final confrontation. Light and darkness would clash one last time, and everything would be put to the test. Satan, with all his cunning, his fury, and his power, would face the final judgment. But he knew, deep in his soul, that the light, that same light he had once borne, was stronger than any darkness he could create. And so, at the end of time, Satan would face his final defeat. He and his followers would be cast into the final abyss, separated forever from God's creation. The battle would come to an end, and with it, the restoration of divine order. Tears would be wiped away, wounds healed, and humanity, once redeemed, would return to the light of the Creator, in a new era of peace and justice. Satan, the great adversary, the fallen angel who dared to challenge the Almighty, would be defeated forever. The war for the human soul, which he fought with such fervor, would finally end. And in the darkness of the abyss, he would remain eternally, no longer as a prince but as a prisoner of his own ruin, condemned to contemplate, for all eternity, the light he could never touch again. And the light would triumph.